There's something that I learned too late in life, but once I understood it, everything about human behavior made more sense. You can sit next to someone for 10 seconds and already know exactly what the interaction is going to feel like. Some people they're just easy to be around, whereas others are not. Everything just feels like work. And nobody explains anything. You just register it immediately. And I used to I called that intuition because I didn't know what else to label it as. But the truth is it's far simpler. It's just that people, they reveal themselves before they speak, right? Through their behavior. And your nervous system, it reads more data than your mind can process, right? You know, how someone stands, how they enter the room, whether they're actually present or hiding behind a performance, right? You can pick up on all of that automatically. And it's why certain people feel good to be around and others feel unpredictable and draining, right? It's either a very good experience or a very bad one. And I would say it has nothing to do necessarily with personality, but has everything to do with whether someone is being themselves or acting out a role, right? Just think, if you've had conversations where, you didn't have to monitor yourself. Things were direct and everything felt straightforward. It was just fluid and just organic. It felt, it just, felt like gravy, man, but you've also been around people who absolutely drained you. They drained you, and they didn't even have to say anything technically offensive or anything like that. You just knew that you couldn't settle into that moment with them, right? There was just something about them. And the reason is straightforward. We respond to authenticity more than likability, right? Someone who can drop the act, even briefly. It changes the entire tone of the interaction. And you've seen it, right? The conversation, it shifts. Everything becomes clearer and more grounded. But the thing is that most people, they never do this. What they do is they stick to the safe answers and they soften themselves to avoid friction, right? They rehearse a version of themselves that they think is acceptable, right? And your body, it reads the performance faster than your mind can label it. That's exactly why some people exhaust you. They're not present. They're maintaining an image. And I would go as far as to say that they haven't gone through the process of individuation, which Carl Jung talks about, right? They haven't done any shadow work. So, but that obviously that's a completely different conversation. That's not really the meat and potatoes of what I'm talking about today. I do have other videos where I do talk about individuation, but here's the simplest way that I can really explain it to you, and it's connected to the law of attraction, but it's through these concepts from physics. And so there's something that's called constructive interference, and what that is that's two waves with similar patterns. When they meet, they amplify each other, and the combined wave becomes stronger. And then there's what's called destructive interference. And that's where two waves with opposing patterns, they meet and then they cancel each other out. So the combined wave collapses. And this is this explains why interactions either make you feel good or make you feel like crap, right? The ones that'll either lift you up or they'll flatten you, right? When someone is genuine, your nervous system, it aligns with something coherent, and that's constructive, right? You think clearer, you feel more grounded. But when someone is pretending, nothing lines up. The signals, they contradict each other. Your system, it cancels the interaction out, and so that's destructive. That's why you walk away feeling drained. And it's not necessarily because the person is bad, but because they weren't actually there. And so here's the closest real world example of what this looks like when it's measured scientifically. So there was a clinical study that connected what's called the SPANE Scale of Emotion. So that's the scale of positive and negative experience. And so what they did was they used a massive sample size of 25,000 participants, and it was conducted in Germany. And so in these participants, they were placed inside of a Faraday cage. And if you're not familiar with what a Faraday cage is, it's an area that's completely void. It's devoid of outside frequencies completely. There's no microwaves, there's no radio waves, there's no external signals whatsoever. It's just human beings in total frequency isolation. Okay. And so inside that environment, the researchers, they measured what the human body itself was producing, which is its own psychological and emotional outputs with no interference. And so with the outside noise completely removed, what they could do is they could identify emotional states with surprising accuracy based on the patterns the person was generating. Right? So in one result, it kept showing up over and over and over again. You know what that was? It was authenticity, the frequency of authenticity. It had the strongest, clearest, and most stable output of any emotional state consistently across the board. It wasn't positivity, it wasn't confidence, it wasn't calmness, it was authenticity. When someone wasn't performing, when they weren't shaping themselves for approval, their internal pattern, it stabilized. And when that stable pattern interacted with another person, it influenced the other person's state. Authenticity, it didn't float in the air like magic. It showed up as consistent, trackable behavior that affected whoever was in front of it. Humans process microsignals faster than conscious thought. Changes in breathing, small shifts in facial tension, tonality, how someone looks at you, whether they're listening to you or they're just waiting for their turn to speak. Whatever it is, you take it all in constantly and instantaneously. And when someone is authentic and genuine, every signal matches their tone. It matches their expressions. Their expressions matches their body language. There is no internal conflict leaking out anywhere. But when someone is pretending, when they have a mask, everything is out of sync. Their words, they point one direction, and then their tone, it points another direction. Their body language, it contradicts both of those things. And your system, it picks up on that instantly. This is why real people feel grounding and fake people feel draining. And the SPANE findings confirmed it. Authenticity produces the clearest emotional pattern, and people react to it immediately. So if you've ever wondered why, strangers open up to you within minutes, people are instantly comfortable or instantly defensive around you, or the room shifts the second you walk in, it's not because you've given off anything mystical. It's none of this hippie shit. It's because you showed up as yourself, okay? Because most people don't do that. They don't. Most people do not do that. Most people are performative. They're performing in some small way and managing how they're seen. But when you don't do that, what happens is it forces people to deal with the real version of you. The real version, not the version that they assumed, and certainly not the version that they're used to dealing with. And some people lean into that and others pull back. But almost no one stays neutral. They're reacting to the fact that the interaction is actually happening and not being managed. But here's the thing. Being authentic and being genuine, it comes with a cost. You probably know this. If you're resonating with this so far, if everything is clicking and you're telling yourself, yes, that is exactly how I felt. That's exactly what's been happening in my life. The cost is that you will be misunderstood, right? You'll be misunderstood, and you will make insecure people massively uncomfortable. You will do that. And you'll attract people who see you as a form of clarity and as safety. And you'll lose people who prefer the performance. But here's the payoff, is that you stop splitting into versions of yourself, right? You stop negotiating with your own instincts, your own intuition. You're able to move through life as one consistent human being. And it won't make life easier or more peaceful, but it gives you something stronger, which is it gives you weight. Because here's the thing, is that people will remember you. People respond to you. People feel the difference, because most interactions aren't real interactions, they're rehearsals. So if you've ever felt out of place, here's the truth. You were never out of place. You were just in rooms that were full of people who weren't showing up. Authenticity, it makes some rooms feel too small. It makes some people uncomfortable. It forces the world to react to you, whether you ask it to or not. It exposes who's pretending and who's insecure. It exposes who only knows how to deal with masks. And when you walk into a room as yourself, it removes everybody's excuses. Everybody's excuses. That's why they react. That's why things shift. That's why the air changes. It's not because you're doing anything extra. It's because you're not hiding. That's the difference.